to the Business Blueprint Podcast, where we take you on an exciting adventure through our triumphs and challenges and failures in creating and maintaining a thriving 6, 7, and 8-figure business. Get ready to dive into our strategies, decisions, and yes, even valuable lessons we've learned from our missteps. But that's not all. We'll also bring you industry-leading guests who will provide you with their priceless insights and wisdom. Stay tuned because the captivating journey of the Business Blueprint begins right now. Hi. I'm Charles Hatley, and this is the Business Blueprint, where each week we come together to discuss topics that are interesting in our business and things that we have gone through as we go from a 7 to an 8 to a 9-figure business. Today, I'm joined by Rebecca Malone and Mr. Dan Cuneo, and we're going to discuss intentionality in marketing specifically. Intentionality is a word that I like to say because it sounds fun, but in marketing, I think it's very important. It's something that we sometimes forget, and maybe add intentionality and effort in there will be more succinct to what we're going to talk about. But the first thing when you're thinking about marketing is a little bit overlooked, and that's your website. So, we all get out there, we throw a website out there and we get our web address, and maybe we don't think very much more about it. And if you have a professional organization, maybe you put a little bit of effort into it. If you're B2B, maybe not so much effort into it. Rebecca, I know that you created the website for the organization Malone Hatley PC that we're at. And the first question I had for you was, how did you decide what coding language to use? There's Drupal, there's Java, there's all sorts of different languages. How did you decide what would be the best coding language?
Well, when I started out and it was just me, myself, and I doing everything, I started with a very basic WordPress site, and then I got a decent looking template that it was relatively easy to change. I played around with a couple of different website builders, but ultimately they were very sort of boxy and I wasn't able to modify a whole lot. So went through just hours and hours and hours of trying to create something that it couldn't ultimately be, and then ended up right back on WordPress right where I started. And so I kept it very simple when it was just me, because most of my marketing wasn't coming from online sources. It was coming from, referrals from other professionals and things like that. And so I just needed a website to look like a legitimate business. And that was really it. It was kind of a directory listing of, this person is real. This is the address, there is a website, and it's got a picture of me. And that's about all that I needed at the time.
And, you talk about this is all I need. Mm-hmm. In all honesty, was that intentional, or was that the best that you could do at that time?
It was a little bit of both. I knew that I didn't want to jump into some sort of big pay-per-click campaign. I wasn't ready to take on any kind of huge monthly recurring expense. So in trying to keep all of that minimal, again, most of my business was based around referrals, which is just legwork of going out and meeting people and getting to be on their referral list. And so the feedback that I got at the time was basically just have a professional website, just something that shows you and your business and the fact that you exist and that you're real. And that's basically all that you really need at this point. Once I started looking into doing some more digital advertising, that was when it became clear that what I had really wasn't enough for what I was getting into.
And Dan, when you think about a website of a company and you start to grow, and all of a sudden you're having clients come in from a more digital resource like pay-per-click or SEO or social media or wherever, how important is that website to be an homage to the owner? Is that important? Is it important to talk about all of your accolades, or is something else important?
It is, but you want your website to really stand out above others. And what I mean by that is, if you're going in the PPC route, the SEO route, and the social media and everything else that's out there, your website is going to be the first impression. So you want that to be a good impression, but it's not just talking about you as the owner or all these awards that I've won or all these cases that I've been successful in. It's more about putting out that information and being that thought leader. I remember in one of my prior roles, we were revamping the website. I was talking to one of the experts and it always resonated with me. They're like, you want to put these articles out there and be the ones that you're kind of the expert in the field to go to. And I cautioned them, I said, because as lawyers, we can't really hold ourselves out as experts per se in some states, because there's always a concern that being potentially misleading to a client, but we can be that thought leader. And what resonated with me was, well, that makes a lot of sense because I'll put out articles, I'll put out information. So everyone is coming to my website, they're getting that information, they're looking to my firm as the ones who are the leaders in that particular field, the ones who are putting out the best information for me so I can educate myself. And you mentioned on other podcasts, Charles, that we want you to be an educated client. And that's just not for family law, but it's for being in the business too. And I just remember talking to that expert, and he was saying, these are the things that we need you to start putting out there, and let's build a campaign around it. And it just really starts with, in my experience, the question really, when I was in another position talking to the owner, I asked him, I said, well, what is your goal here? Is your goal to be a firm that is just going to be the go-to firm in one particular city, or is your goal to really kind of expand and grow? And what does that growth look like? Because at that time, we were in a couple different cities and states, but it's more, I want to be international. I want to be the firm that clients go to for certain issues. And so based on that is how we started creating the website and putting the articles out there, and making sure that it's easy, right? We want to make sure that when the clients are coming, they're looking, okay, this is, as Rebecca said, a legit firm, right? But then also, what services do they provide? Is this something that they can help me out with? And at the end of the day, getting the clients to the website is just really the first step. It's what do they do when they're on your website? And there's just so much information that you can provide, but there's so much data that you can look at too to really help you out. And I'm sure we'll go into it, but it's how long are they on your website? Where are they? What's the click-through rate? Do you have any call to actions? And so it's just kind of breaking it all down and really learning, okay, this is what I need to do. And the website is fluid, is ever evolving. You don't want to just put information up there and then it becomes stale. You always want to say, okay, what can I do to improve this website? What are the clients looking for? Who am I targeting? Where are they coming in from? And that allows just for other opportunities to really dig into the data to determine, this is where I need to expand next. This is where I'm bringing in the clients from. Or maybe my click-through rate, which is they're coming to my website, but then they're not staying long. Do I need to add more information on there? Is their information not good enough? So we're always just kind of looking at what is it that we can do, but it starts with, what is the goal of the owner? And is it to be a solo practitioner, or is it to really grow your firm? And what does that growth mean to you?
It's being intentional. It's looking at this website, this thing that is frequently, I think, overlooked, in my opinion. I look at other businesses' websites. I'm like, well, it's pretty. They've got cool pictures. It doesn't really ask me to do anything. I don't know why I'm here. I know that they exist, at least in the internet world, and it tells me a little bit about the people that are in the business, right? It says like, hey, so and so are in the business. We do. I'll pick on a website I was looking at the other day. We do steel tubing. That's it, steel tubing. And I was like, okay. And so it was B2B. So if I was somebody, a purchaser looking for steel tubing, I would have come across this website, but it didn't let me do anything. And as we've looked at the growth of the internet from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0 to what will be Web 3.0, the idea that is we went from basically just digitized phone book listings to interactive, like I can interact with the website, to the next iteration is going to be almost super interactive. And so when I go to a website, it's drawing me in. It's giving me, like Dan said, it's giving me information. It's doing something. Rebecca, how did you come to the idea of what you wanted your website to do?
Right. That took a while because, again, it was starting out. It just needed to make me look like a legitimate person, like I had a bar license and I'm here and I actually practice law. Yes, check, done. But then when you think about more from the client's perspective, there's not a lot of clients that are searching for attorneys purely based on the awards that they've won, right? They're not purely looking for, they want somebody who can help with their particular problem. And so I found that by focusing in on a couple of different niche areas and really putting a lot of content out about those particular niche areas, that's what would draw in clients, because they were looking specifically for, I need an attorney for an emergency motion. I need emergency custody. And then I'm going to come up because I have articles that talk about emergency custody and emergency visitation and things like that. And so just getting into that, flipping that mindset of, instead of saying just like, I'm here, I'm the best, and look at all these awards I have, really talking about those pain points that these particular clients are having that's what's going to bring them in, because you can just do a search for like top 100 attorneys, right? And what makes you stick out from the other 99? It has to be something that is individual to that particular client, that speaks to them, that gives them some sort of information, gives them some reassurance, gives them direction in what they need to do next. So not just like, here's my great article, but here's my great article and talk to me now, right? And we'll talk about the specifics of your case, and really getting them to that point where they can make contact with you and you know it's going to be a good fit because it's in a niche area that you practice in.
So, I mean, what you're talking about is identifying your market, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about somebody that's out there searching for a product. And now, Dan, the website has brought in this person searching for this product. What do you do now? So you got the eye on your website. You need to do something with those eyes. And the person's already identified themselves as a good potential client for your services. Now what?
Right. And that's where a lot of firms or businesses, I think, lose the client, is they have their website up, but then they're not really monitoring and paying attention to what are the clients looking for, who are the clients that are coming in. And it's so important that once you have that client, you really only, quite honestly, have just a few seconds. Otherwise, they're going to leave and go somewhere else. You want to keep them engaged. So that's where those thought leadership articles come in. But then also the bigger, I think, item is going to be that call to action. And you'll hear a lot of people say the CTAs on that. And the call to action is, what do you want that client to do? Great. They're on my website. They're looking at my information. I've identified them as a potential client that I might be able to help. Now I need to get in front of them. I need to talk to them. And so the client needs to know, okay, I'm on the website. How can I set up a consultation with this person? How can I set up a phone call with them? And so you want to have something on your website to where they can click on it and it's, yes, I can schedule. Scheduling online is something that's so easy. A lot of clients are wanting to do online scheduling as opposed to calling in and making the appointment, because you really want your website not to have the information that's out there, and that you can show, here's what I practice, here's what I do, and here's, how potentially it relates to your case. But also you want to make it easy for the client to meet with you. So if it's hard, you're going to lose them. And so you want to make sure that on one of the call to actions is schedule a time. You can do it right here, and we'll make sure we're available for you, and make sure you have the availability too. Having someone schedule out days or weeks later, the likelihood of them retaining it alone showing up is almost de minimis. And so you want to make sure that you have the capacity and the ability and the availability on these call to actions to provide that service. But then maybe it's just they're not wanting to meet with you, but get them involved in a what we would call a drip campaign. So you get their contact information and you just send them out information. So you keep them engaged, but you let them know as a client, okay, this firm is out here wanting to help me out, or this business knows that I have potential concerns or issues, and they're sending me these articles just to help me out. So as the consumer or the client, I'm thinking, wow, this firm is taking an active interest in what my potential issues are. So I may want to go and talk to them. But it's always just keeping the clients engaged. But if you don't have any call to action on your website, you're just basically that directory, right? Okay, great. Look at my website. Now go to my competitor. I want you to talk to me. And so that's why it's so important to have that on there.
A call to action was a CTA. It was something that when we were getting started, I heard all the time. I didn't understand what it was. I looked it up. It didn't really tell me what it was. A call to action is as simple as having your phone number hyperlinked on your web page so that when somebody looks at it from their cell phone, they can click on your phone number and their cell phone automatically calls you. It could be something as simple as contact us now, and it automatically pulls up their email. It doesn't have to be overly complicated.
Right.
And what you said, Dan, about identifying what part of the sales process, your potential client is in is very important, right? Are they ready to schedule and talk to you today? If so, here's that option. Or have they just begun the buying process? Are they just looking? And now you let them get into the beginning of your funnel. And a funnel is, hey, download this free guide on how to do whatever it is that my business does, and sign up for my newsletter. And I'll send you a monthly newsletter. That's a funnel, because the idea is that the person, as they go along the buying journey, are going to keep looking back at your stuff. Dan, I'm going to stay with you because you had brought up data earlier. So I want to focus in on the clients at the beginning of the sales process, the ones that getting into that funnel. How do you work to track their process along that funnel through your campaigns?
Sure. Once they visit your website and they give their information, then you have their email address and you send them that information that you were talking about. You always want to make sure that we're top of mind, but we don't want to send them information on a daily basis. It's really more of just continue that top of mind thought, which is maybe we do it on a biweekly basis, or maybe it's on a monthly newsletter. But as long as we have their information and they're allowing us to send them the newsletter or the articles or wherever the case may be, just make sure that we continue that engagement. And then at some point in their journey, they will either have resolved what their issue is and they don't no longer need the services of your business, or maybe they're at that point where it's time to schedule that consult or that meeting, and they have this information and they can go back to the website and schedule that appointment. But making sure that you're following them along in the journey is so important, because you're remaining top of mind. Once you're no longer top of mind, then they could go to your competitor, or they just aren't going to contact you again. And then you expend all this time and energy and resources and you've lost a potential client. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get everyone that comes into your website, right? But it's continuing to have your name out there, to be that thought leader. So maybe they'll refer you to someone else and they'll come to your website, and you're just tracking it by the traffic that's you're engaging the consumer in. It's all about that funnel, right? It's all right. We got to get people in first before you get a client. And then as we get them down through the funnel, how do we get them down through the funnel? Well, that's continuing what we would call that drip campaign. And we just kind of ease them all the way down along their journey and just being patient with them. Sometimes it's months, sometimes it's a year, or sometimes it's the next day. But we just want to make sure that we don't lose them and we're just remaining. I've just said it so many times, but it's so important to be that top of mind.
It is. And one super easy way to understand where your clients are at in the journey is include links in your contacts, right? Because then you can track how engaged they are with each thing that you send them. So if you're sending an email, let's say you sell specialized, I'm going to stick with steel tubing. Let's say you sell specialized steel tubing, and all of a sudden you see the client is always clicking on this thing, looking at things about a particular type of tubing. Your CRM can track that. And so your CRM is actually tracking the engagement that they have. And maybe you create a second layer that's now like, hey, saw you've been really interested in this. Would you like a free sample? Or I saw you've been really interested in this product we're offering. We actually have this ebook. If you want it, if not, don't worry about it. And the reality is when you reach out to somebody at that point and you're not trying to sell them something, you're going to lower their defenses. And then they're going to be more open to hearing you, because I think we all make the mistake of trying to sell. You always need to ask for the sale. Of course you do. But I think that when you're talking about somebody's adventure through the sales process, sometimes we ask for the sale so early that we blow the sale. Versus just like, hey man, here's this, just take it. I saw you were interested in, let's say, divorce. So we just have this free ebook. Just want to reach out, make sure it's still relevant to you. Didn't want to send you something you don't want. And we're like, okay. And of course the ebook's branded, right? Has all your contact information. So Rebecca, what we're talking about is a relatively high-tech way to track people's process through this sales funnel journey. We didn't have that at the beginning, right? We didn't have HubSpot at however many dollars per month. We had an Excel spreadsheet and MailChimp.
Yep.
How'd you do it then?
It was not pretty. We had somewhat of a decent idea of what was going on, right? So there's a few tools out there you can use. MailChimp can track different email campaigns, and you can make some different journeys depending on how somebody contacted you and what they did. So like in Dan's example, where someone contacts you, maybe they're not ready, but they've downloaded your ebook. You set them on one journey. If somebody else clicks on a contact us now button, they're going to get a different journey, right? And you can track that through MailChimp to see how many people are unsubscribing and how many people actually open it. And right, there's a lot of data they can give you. Using CallRail is another great tool. So we used CallRail for a number of different things for a while. On like a social media post, for example, we would have a certain CallRail number on it, or in a certain print advertising, we'd have a different CallRail number on that. And so when somebody called from that source, you knew, okay, this is someone who's calling based on our print ad or someone calling based on our Facebook ad. And then we had the biggest Excel spreadsheet in the entire world that you would plug it in and say, what was the source? Facebook. And then at the end of the month, we could go back through and say, this is how many calls we got from that Facebook campaign. This is how many calls we got from this other campaign, from our print advertising, from whatever. And we could piece it together and at least get an idea of what's successful and what's not. We had a few campaigns where we had 0 calls. And so we know that's not a good use of our money, and let's move on and do something else. So it was really beneficial. Can't really overstate how much of a pain it is to track things that way, and nobody liked doing it. But it ultimately helped us to move forward and to be more successful with each of our campaigns after that.
You're right. CallRail was a wonderful tool. I mean, the neat thing about CallRail, you can actually have it answer when you answer the phone. It says Facebook, so you don't have to think. Oh, come from Facebook. I know that. And it's a relatively inexpensive tool to use with a very high return. MailChimp or Constant Contact or any of the other type of mail programs, relatively cheap tools to use as you're getting started because your contact list is low, and most of these services charge you by the size of your contact list. But they're cheap, and like you said, you can manually create these pathways. I want to thank you for taking the time to talk about your website today, Rebecca, and how to be intentional in what you want your website to do, Dan. This is part one. So part two, we're going to talk about directing people to your website and understanding who you want to come to your website. So if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe to this. We will come back every week to discuss things that are going on, and we look forward to talking to you next time.
Hi, this is Dan Cuneo with the Business Blueprint. Thank you for taking time to listen to this week's podcast. Please join us next week for part 2.